My son's wife laughed right in my face when I handed her a small envelope during our family gathering. With everyone watching, she smirked and said, "Thank you, but we don't need your pocket change." What she didn't know was that inside that envelope was something far more powerful than money. It was the document that made her husband, my son, the new owner of our family business. If you want to know how that moment unfolded and what happened next, stay with me until the end. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. My name is Margaret Lane, and I'm a 58-year-old widow. For most of my life, I worked side by side with my late husband, Robert, building up our family business from nothing. It wasn't just a company to us. It was years of sweat, sleepless nights, and sacrifice. It was our legacy, something I dreamed of passing down to our only son, Ethan. Ethan is 29 now, kind-hearted and hard-working, but quiet. He never believed he was ready to run the business, even though I saw the strength in him. I told him many times, "One day, this will be yours." This business is not just numbers on paper, it's our family's future. But there was always someone else in his ear, his wife, Sienna. She is in her mid-20s, full of charm on the outside, but she often dismissed me as if my words carried no value. At family dinners, she would roll her eyes when I spoke about tradition or the business. More than once, she said things like, "We don't live in the past. Ethan and I have our own path." Still, I kept hoping that with time, she would respect the history and sacrifice that built our lives. Deep down, I wanted her to feel like part of the family, not just by name, but by heart. That hope began to break the night of my birthday gathering, when I decided to give Ethan a gift that would change everything. The night of my birthday gathering started with warmth, laughter, and the smell of roasted chicken filling my home. Family members and close friends gathered around, and for a moment I felt the kind of happiness I had longed for since my husband passed away. I had spent the day preparing not only the dinner, but also something far more important, a gift that would change my son's life. In a plain white envelope, I carried the legal documents transferring ownership of our family business to Ethan. I wanted the moment to be special, not just for him, but for everyone who had supported us over the years. As I moved through the room, greeting relatives and accepting their kind wishes, my eyes landed on Ethan and Sienna. They stood close together, but as usual, Sienna's attention seemed more on her phone than on the people around her. She wore a sharp red dress, her nails perfectly polished, and her smile practiced. To anyone else, she might have looked like the picture of elegance, but to me, she carried an air of superiority, as if she was waiting for the right moment to remind us she didn't belong to our world of grit and sacrifice. I had debated for days whether I should hand the envelope directly to Ethan, but I wanted Sienna to feel included. I thought that if she opened it herself, she would finally see how much trust and love I had for their marriage. I hoped she would understand that this wasn't just about passing down money or property. It was about keeping the Lane family legacy alive. After dinner, when the plates were cleared and the cake was brought out, I stood up and thanked everyone for coming. The room quieted as I walked over to Ethan and Sienna, the envelope in my hand. My heart pounded. I had kept this secret carefully, and now it was time to let it out. "Sienna," I said with a smile, extending the envelope to her, "I want you to open this. It's something very close to my heart, and I want you both to have it." She glanced at the envelope, then looked at me with raised eyebrows. Instead of gratitude, she let out a loud laugh that filled the room. "Thank you, Margaret," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But we don't really need your pocket change." The room fell into an awkward silence. My sister-in-law, Mary, looked down at her plate, while my brother cleared his throat. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks. Everyone's eyes were on me, watching how I would react. Ethan's face turned red as well, but not from anger, more from embarrassment. He shifted uncomfortably, his hand brushing against his glass as if he wanted to disappear. He didn't defend me. He didn't correct her. He just stood there, silent, as though his wife's words had tied his tongue. In that moment, it felt as though the years I had spent sacrificing for my family meant nothing. I had worked through nights, missed birthdays, and stood by Robert as he built the business brick by brick. And now, in front of family and friends, my gift, my heart, was mocked as though it was worthless. I forced myself to stand tall, but inside my chest ached. Sienna still held the envelope, unopened, as she smirked and looked around the room, almost seeking approval for her joke. Some guests gave nervous chuckles, others stayed quiet, but the sting of humiliation was sharp and clear. I looked at Ethan. His eyes met mine for only a second before he looked away. I could see the conflict on his face. He loved me, I knew he did, but he was caught between his mother and his wife, and in that moment, his silence cut deeper than Sienna's words. My mind raced. I could have snatched the envelope back. I could have shouted, told her exactly what I thought of her disrespect, but something inside me told me not to. I remembered Robert's voice, calm and steady, reminding me that dignity is never won by anger. He used to say, "Let the truth reveal itself, and it will be louder than any insult." So I swallowed the lump in my throat, and instead of lashing out, I let my voice stay calm. "Why don't you go ahead and open it, dear?" I said softly. The smirk on Sienna's face faltered just a little, but she quickly regained her composure. She tapped the envelope against her palm, as if weighing whether it was even worth opening. Then, with a laugh that seemed more forced this time, she said, "All right then, let's see what we have here." The tension in the room was thick. All eyes followed her every move as she slowly tore the edge of the envelope. My hands clenched together, my heart pounding so hard, I thought everyone could hear it. This was the moment I had prepared for, the moment when truth would stand on its own, without me having to fight for it. What none of them knew was that the power inside that envelope was not pocket change. It was far greater. It was the key to Ethan's future, and the weight of generations of hard work that could never be measured in dollars. And soon Sienna was about to realize just how wrong she had been. As Sienna slid her manicured finger along the flap of the envelope, I held my breath. Every second felt heavy, as if the entire room was waiting for something more than a gift to be revealed. My pulse beat in my ears, but I reminded myself that I had already made my choice. I could have given those documents privately to Ethan, but I wanted this to be a public moment, not to humiliate, but to show that what I was passing on was something sacred. I wanted my son to see that I trusted him, even if others didn't. The silence stretched across the table. Only the faint clink of forks against plates filled the air, as some guests tried to act casual, though their eyes never left Sienna's hands. She pulled the papers halfway out, then paused, almost disappointed, to see that it wasn't cash. Her smirk returned for a moment, and I saw her lips twitch as though she was ready with another sarcastic remark. But I stayed calm. I kept my gaze steady, just as Robert used to do whenever people underestimated him. He always said, "The moment you let anger control your tongue, you lose control of the truth." I repeated those words silently, almost like a prayer, as I waited for her to take the next step. "Go on," I said gently, keeping my voice even. "Read it." She raised an eyebrow at me, then unfolded the document. The paper crackled loudly in the quiet room. She began to scan it, her eyes moving quickly across the words. At first, her face showed boredom, as if she expected some sentimental letter or maybe a list of rules I wanted Ethan to follow. But then I saw it. The exact second her expression shifted. The curve of her mouth straightened, her eyebrows pinched together. Her skin lost a little color. The room seemed to shrink. Everyone noticed her change, and the whispers began. My brother leaned over to Mary and muttered, "What is it?" Mary shook her head, her eyes wide. Sienna's hand trembled slightly as she read aloud, her voice breaking its confident rhythm. This is a transfer of ownership for the Lane family business." Her eyes darted to Ethan, then back to me. "Is this real?" I kept my composure. "Yes," I said firmly. "It is notarized, effective, immediately." "Ethan is now the rightful owner." Gasps echoed around the room. My niece clapped her hand over her mouth, and one of Ethan's childhood friends whispered, "No way!" All the while, Ethan stood frozen, his face caught between shock and disbelief. Inside, my heart ached and swelled at the same time. I had pictured this moment so many times in my mind, hoping it would be filled with joy and gratitude. But here it was, heavy with tension. Still, I knew this was the moment Ethan needed. He had doubted himself for too long, and perhaps he had allowed Sienna's voice to drown out his own. Now the truth was in his hands, undeniable. Sienna quickly folded the paper, her hands tightening as though she wanted to hide it. "Margaret," she said, her tone sharp but uneven, This is a huge decision. Shouldn't we have discussed this first?" I looked her in the eye, not with anger, but with the steadiness of someone who had already decided. "It was not your decision to make," I replied. "This business was built by my husband and me for our family, and Ethan is my family. It belongs with him." Ethan finally found his voice. "Mom, are you serious?" His tone carried both awe and fear, like a man staring at a mountain he wasn't sure he could climb. "Yes, Ethan," I said softly, my throat tight with emotion. "Your father wanted this. I want this. And I know, deep inside, you are ready." The eyes of the entire room shifted back to Ethan, as if waiting for his response. He looked down at the document in Sienna's hand, then back at me. I saw the boy I had raised, the one who used to follow Robert into the workshop, asking questions about how the machines worked. I saw the man he had become, cautious and uncertain, but with a spark of potential that had never dimmed. In that instant, I knew that my calm, deliberate choice, to let Sienna open that envelope, to hold my tongue when I was insulted, was the right one. Because now, the truth wasn't just spoken by me, it was staring them all in the face, undeniable and permanent. And though Sienna's laughter had tried to belittle me, she could not laugh away what was written in black ink and sealed by law. That was the turning point. The moment the tide shifted. From that point forward, nothing would ever be the same between us. The air in the room had turned heavy, as though every person was holding their breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Sienna clutched the papers tightly, her perfectly painted nails pressing into the edges, as if she could control what was written there simply by holding on harder. But no amount of pressure could erase the words that gave Ethan full ownership of the Lane family business. Her confident smirk was gone. Her skin, usually glowing with expensive makeup and self-assurance, now looked pale under the warm lights of the dining room. She opened her mouth to speak, but for once no clever remark came out. The silence was louder than any insult she had thrown at me. "Is this really true?" she asked again, her voice thinner this time. She looked around the room, as if searching for someone to tell her it was a mistake, but no one did. Everyone had heard me confirm it, and now the truth sat between us, like a stone too heavy to move. I stayed calm, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Yes, it's true," I said firmly. "From this moment on, the business belongs to Ethan. It is his to lead, to protect, and to grow. It was never about money. It was about legacy, responsibility, and trust." Murmurs rippled through the guests. Some leaned toward each other, whispering words like unbelievable and incredible. Others simply watched, wide-eyed, their attention locked on the young couple in front of them. Ethan finally stepped forward, his hands slightly trembling as he reached for the papers. "Sienna," he said softly, "give them to me." For a second, she hesitated. I saw the conflict flash across her face, pride against reality. She wanted to hold on, to stay in control, but the truth was slipping through her fingers. With an unsteady breath, she handed the documents over to Ethan. The moment the papers touched his hands, something shifted. My son's shoulders, usually slouched with self-doubt, straightened. His eyes, uncertain just moments before, sharpened with a mix of shock and newfound determination. He looked at me, his voice heavy with emotion. "Mom, I don't even know what to say." Tears pricked at my eyes, but I held them back. This wasn't a moment for weakness. It was a moment for strength. "Say that you'll honor it," I whispered, my voice breaking just enough for him to know how much it meant to me. He nodded, swallowing hard. "I will. I promise you, I will." The room erupted in claps and cheers from some of the family members who understood what had just happened. My brother, who had worked alongside Robert in the early days, slapped Ethan on the back. "Your father would be proud, son," he said, his voice thick with pride. Mary, my sister-in-law, wiped tears from her eyes, whispering, "This is exactly how it should be." But not everyone was celebrating. Sienna stood stiffly beside Ethan, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her jaw clenched. She looked as if she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole. The humiliation was clear in her eyes, but she tried to mask it with anger. She turned to Ethan sharply. "Do you even understand what this means? Running a business? The responsibility? We never agreed to this." Her words cut through the moment like a knife, but Ethan didn't flinch. For the first time, he didn't shrink under her sharp tone. Instead, he held the papers against his chest and looked her in the eye. "This isn't about agreement," he said steadily. "This is about family. This is about my parents' work, my father's dream, and now my duty. I won't turn my back on that." The strength in his voice made my heart swell. I had waited so long to see Ethan believe in himself, to see him stand tall. And now, in the very moment when Sienna tried to belittle me, she had unwittingly given him the push he needed to rise. Gasps of approval spread through the room. One of the older family friends leaned over to me and whispered, "You raised him well." I smiled, my chest tight with pride and relief. Sienna's face twisted with frustration, but she had no more ground to stand on. Her earlier laughter now hung in the air like a sour note no one could forget. She had tried to humiliate me, but instead, she had humiliated herself. I placed a hand gently on Ethan's arm. "Your father and I built this so you could carry it forward. I know it won't be easy, but I also know you have the strength to do it. You've always had it." His eyes glistened as he nodded again. "I won't let you down, Mom." At that moment, I knew the gift had done exactly what I hoped it would. It had not only secured the future of the family business, but had also awakened the leader inside my son. The humiliation I endured from Sienna's cruel laughter no longer mattered, because the truth had revealed itself. The business was safe, Ethan was stepping into his role, and my husband's legacy was protected. The room slowly returned to conversation, though the energy had changed completely. Where there had been awkward silence, there was now pride and excitement. Guests talked about the future, about Ethan's plans, about how the Lane family legacy would live on. And as for Sienna, she remained quiet, her head lowered slightly, her earlier arrogance replaced with the sting of regret. For the first time, she had nothing to say. The envelope, once dismissed as pocket change, had spoken louder than any insult. It had carried the weight of history, sacrifice, and love. And now, it had set the course for our family's future. That was the moment everything changed. Not just for Ethan, but for me. The celebration that night ended very differently than it began. What was supposed to be a simple birthday gathering had turned into a defining moment for our family. The guests who once sat in silence now lingered around Ethan, congratulating him, offering advice, and telling him how proud Robert would have been. I watched him stand taller with each handshake, each word of encouragement. My son, who once doubted himself, was stepping into his role with strength I had always known was there. As the last of the guests trickled out, the house grew quiet again. The warmth of the evening lingered, but so did the memory of Sienna's laughter, sharp and mocking. She moved around the kitchen, clearing plates in silence, her usual chatter and confidence gone. When her eyes met mine, there was no smirk, no trace of the superiority she had worn like a crown. Instead, there was something else. Shame. Perhaps even fear. She spoke softly, almost too soft to hear. I didn't realize what was in the envelope. I shouldn't have said what I did. Her apology was not warm or heartfelt, but I accepted it silently because the truth had already spoken louder than any words. I didn't need her approval or her respect to know my worth. That moment had taught me something powerful. People may try to belittle you, but dignity is not something they can take away. It is something you choose to hold on to, no matter what. Later that night, Ethan sat beside me in the living room. The papers were still in his hands, creased from where Sienna had held them so tightly. He turned them over and over, as though the weight of responsibility was sinking in with every glance. "Mom," he said quietly, "I never thought I could do this. I always felt like I wasn't enough, but tonight, something changed. I feel like Dad is here, pushing me forward." My chest tightened, and for the first time in years, tears slid down my cheeks without shame. "He is here," I told him. "Every part of this business has his spirit in it, and now it has yours too. You'll make mistakes, Ethan, but you'll learn. That's what makes a leader." He leaned over, pulling me into a hug that was stronger than any hug he had given me before. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself," he whispered. In that moment, I realized that the gift wasn't just about papers or signatures. It was about passing on courage, belief, and responsibility. It was about reminding my son of who he was and where he came from. Sienna sat quietly in the corner of the room, scrolling through her phone, but not saying much. Her silence was telling. For once, she wasn't the loudest voice in the room, and perhaps in her own way, she had learned something too, that money and appearances cannot measure the worth of a legacy built on sacrifice and love. In the days that followed, word spread quickly through the family and the community. People who had known Robert came by to congratulate Ethan. Some offered their support, others offered their services, but the most important thing was that they all looked to Ethan now as the rightful head of the Lane family business. He was no longer just Margaret's boy. He was a leader in his own right. I watched from the background, my heart swelling with pride. For years, I had carried the burden of responsibility, always worrying about what would happen when I could no longer manage it. Now that weight had been lifted. The future was secure. But more than that, the night had taught me a lesson I will never forget. People will test your patience, your dignity, and your worth. They may laugh at your kindness, mistaking it for weakness. But true strength doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove itself with anger. True strength stands quietly, waiting for the truth to be revealed. That envelope, dismissed as pocket change, became the very thing that revealed character. It showed the arrogance of one person, the silence of another, and the hidden strength of my son. It turned humiliation into triumph, doubt into confidence, and disrespect into a lesson no one in that room will ever forget. Even now, when I think about Sienna's laughter, I don't feel anger anymore. I feel gratitude, because without that moment of disrespect, the reveal wouldn't have been so powerful. Ethan wouldn't have had the chance to rise so boldly in front of everyone, and I wouldn't have been reminded that patience, dignity, and faith are stronger than any insult. As I look to the future, I know there will be challenges. Running a business is never easy, but I also know my son is ready. And as for Sienna, she never laughed at me again. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your thoughts.